by Sideline Sports Network. We are bringing you, I can't say breaking news because it's been out for a while, but Conrad Hussy decides to join the 2023 class here at Florida State. Before we get into all of that and talking about the trifecta that came with this, because if it wasn't for Edwin Joseph and Hykeem Williams, I don't think this would have happened. But before we get into that, this episode, just like all the rest of them, are brought to you by Game Day Vodka. Game Day Vodka is an American-made vodka. It's an American company. It's an American bottled and American distilled, and also American sold. If you would like to check them out, please go to GameDayVodka.com as long as you're 21 years of age or older. And if you don't want to do it online, then you can go to either a Publix or you can go to ABC Wine and Spirits and pick up their product. Give it a try. It is a new way of making vodka. It is 6 times distilled. It is gluten-free, which I was informed about this because I've never told anybody that. It's actually pretty cool. Here's a bottle of it. There's the Florida State bottle of it. As you can tell, I haven't drank it. All the bubbles. But it's really good. There is a bottle that is open. It's just not that one. But anyways, we appreciate them sponsoring us and the partnership that we have with Game Day Vodka. Obviously tonight, Taylor wasn't able to be on last night, but he's obviously here tonight. James won't be able to be on tonight. He's actually hosting a Jaguars watch party. If any of y'all are Jaguar fans, I think they go live at 8:30 tonight. So make sure you go over to I think it's going to be on Sports Den Media on their YouTube channel. So go give them a watch if you're a Jaguars fan or if you just want to hear James talk football. Either way, it'll work. But let's get into what we're all here for, which is Conrad Hussy joining the 2023 class. What does it do for this class? How hard was it to recruit him? Did he put his recruitment off because of teams coming after him late? And what was the ultimate decision to come to Florida State, in our opinion? Taylor, what would you say he does for the class first and foremost as far as the rankings part go?
Well, really, when you're bringing in a 4-star prospect, he's a true safety. He's not really a corner as much. He's more prototypical safety. But I do think it's a need that Florida State really needed in this class because, as you talked about before with Jamie Robinson, he is thinking about going to the NFL draft. He accepted the Senior Bowl invite, but you also have to understand that he can opt out of that invite before he goes and plays the Senior Bowl. So it is something you have to kind of understand with everything. But just overall, Florida State's added 5 defensive backs to this rotation they have in the recruiting class. And I think they've gotten all kind of different skill sets. You've got Jabril Rawls and Quindarius Jones and guys like that are having to basically be versatile pieces that you need. Even a KJ Kirkland, I think he's going to be more of a true safety with that being kind of said there. But just overall, I think Florida State really hit everything they needed to hit. I mean, even an Akeem Dent, who may not even be able to come back to Florida State next year. Who knows? I mean, he still hasn't announced. So really, when you're looking at it, this is a great get for Florida State. I didn't really think Florida State was going to be in the door because you have to think about it. He committed in April to Penn State. He visited Florida State in June. Didn't really visit Florida State or did anything else or really had much communication with him past that time until that December 9th visit that he had later this past week. So it just kind of goes to show that the staff really pushed all their chips in. They said, okay, we're going to go all in on Conrad Hussy to end the class, and I think that's exactly what they did in this situation. I think that was a perfect situation for them going forward there, and I think that's exactly what they needed in this class.
Well, I'm extremely excited for the coaching staff to have pushed in on Conrad as hard as they did because obviously it was very much needed. So no one can say that he doesn't play up par or up to par opponents because he comes from St. Thomas Aquinas from Fort Lauderdale, Florida. He's 6 foot, 190 pounds, probably a little bit heavier than that now, but that's what they got him rated and at weight at. It said Miami went hard after Hykeem Williams until the bitter end, lost to FSU. Miami made a late play for Edwin Joseph, lost to FSU. Miami went all in on Conrad Hussy through today and lost to FSU. FSU went into Miami's backyard and got 3 players from Miami to come to Florida State, basically. That's pretty much what happened in this cycle. Florida State went into the backyard of Coral Gables, picked the guys that they wanted out of it, and landed them. Mario went 0 for 3. That is correct.
I will say this, and I know a lot of fans
finish this for me real quick,
Yeah.
because I gotta go real quick.
Okay.
So keep it busy for like 3 minutes. I gotta take
Okay.
this, and I'll be right back.
All right. Yeah. Well, I just wanted to kind of touch on Chris's point with that, because you have guys like Damari Brown and also Devontae Brown that actually committed and signed to Miami. So this is a situation where I think Florida State really wanted to get involved with both of the brothers. We all thought they were going to be package deals and what they were going to bring to Florida State. And unfortunately, they sided with Miami. So Florida State had some kind of cleaning up to do. You saw in the recruiting class that they had through early signing period, and you saw the bumps and bruises that we had. You know, you talk about the Cedric Baxter, the 5-star running back commit that signed over to Texas. Then you turn over at the wide receiver position, and you have a guy like Jalen Brown, 4-star out of Booker Prep, that was signing with LSU. He didn't really make any much more communication with Florida State. You turn over and have a guy like Andy Jean, the 4-star wide receiver out of Miami. There's just a lot of different things that people are signing left and right. You're even looking at a guy like Cameron Robinson, who you thought you had a little bit more momentum for, 4-star linebacker out of the Virginia area, and he also signed with Virginia. So really, when you're looking at some of those players that we had in the class that signed elsewhere, and I'm not even going to get into the Keldrick Falk situation just yet, but I think this is a situation where Florida State, unfortunately, were kind of struck out on certain things. I'm not saying they're batting 1,000 by any chance, but I am saying that they had enough momentum to go through this class. I think when you're looking at it, I don't think Miami had a bad class. I think they're one of the polarizing kind of figures of a winner/loser, because I think they've had some moments where they were successful. And as I've told you many times on the show, Mario Cristobal is a tremendous recruiter. He's one of the best in the country in recruiting. But the problem is his on-field coaching is not the greatest. So that's one thing you're going to have to figure out. Even when he had a generational quarterback in Justin Herbert, didn't really do a whole lot with him. He did well enough, but he didn't exceed that over to a championship hump, as Miami fans are alluding to. Even with a Tyler Van Dyke, very talented quarterback, but the problem is didn't really develop him properly. Surprised he came back for another year and actually stayed at Miami instead of transferring if he didn't go to the NFL. But, I digress on that point. But just overall, I think Cristobal has got some things to learn, not especially in the recruiting side of things, but translating that recruiting efforts and money well spent on some of these prospects and turning that into wins. I don't know if they can do that. Maybe they can, maybe they can't, but that's just kind of my thoughts.
Well, the most important thing is that we all do know that Mario is a very good recruiter. The only question that anyone has with Mario is if he's a good X's and O's coach. Right now, it doesn't look so good. But as far as recruiting goes, you cannot turn your eyes away from what he has done so far in this class. You can't even turn your eyes at what he did in the transfer portal. He's doing well, but it's good to see that this staff, when they go after the gentleman that they want, that Miami is also going after, that we get them. I mean, that's very important because of how well the Miami staff does recruit. James was on here last night with me, and we were talking about being excited about what we do have versus being upset on what we don't have. I do believe the 24's class is going to be a much higher ranked class than what the 23 class is, as long as we go out there and take care of business. What I mean by that is we go out and get a 10 or 11 win season next year, compete for an ACC championship. If we win that ACC championship, end up in the playoffs. And then the recruiting part will, we are showing progress by all means. When you go 9-3 in the regular season, where most of the nation was picking you to go 6-6, obviously you have done something that most people didn't anticipate. But I'm looking at what Florida State did to the Gators, what Florida State did to Miami this season. We embarrassed Miami in their home, if you want to call it that, in Doak South. We went and played a very competitive game with the Gators, but we pretty much dominated the game for the most part, other than giving up some blown coverages for them to stay within reach of us. What does this do as far as recruiting goes for next year? Because I believe when you pull a Hykeem Williams, a Conrad Hussy, an Edwin Joseph, and out of those three guys, you would definitely say Edwin Joseph is the most underrated. Like they're
Yes.
not. So we're going to bring them out too a little bit on it. When we say Edwin Joseph is underrated, what exactly are we meaning? Is it who's missing on him? Is it the composite people that are doing the scoring, or is it that he didn't go to enough camps? What's the issue?
Yeah, it's more of just a lack of ranking, I think. And you really didn't know where to put him because he was playing wide receiver there. He was playing a little bit of safety and a little bit of corner. I just think there was a lot of skill sets, I guess you could say, when you bring an athlete to the table, when you're putting so much on your plate at one time. I think he's best suited as a defensive back, but the problem is he kept playing wide receiver, kept playing, cornerback. And it's okay to play other positions. As you've seen with Blake Nicholson playing running back, he was a very productive running back. But the problem is when you're in that situation where you have that basically that impact of speed, I think you have to understand that it's not all about playing several positions. I understand that he wants to make his team win and he wants to do what's best for his team at the end of the day. And that's what you're all there for in high school until you get a little bit higher. But just the problem is just you have to understand that Edwin Joseph is that talented playmaker. I don't think he's a year one contributor. I think it may be a year two or year three kind of guy. But I think it could be somebody that Florida State can really turn in the right direction as development. Even, for example, a Shaheem Brown, I think, can be an example because I think he could be a surefire starter at safety if Jamie Robinson leaves. But we'll definitely see.
I'm in like 100% agreement, and I actually like the analysis that you just gave. So much so, like y'all did a good job the other night when we did a show as well. I had absolutely nothing to add. I always have an opinion about something.
Yeah.
I probably get on people's nerves with it, but I don't really care. But the past couple of nights, and y'all have hit the nail like right on the head, so I don't have much to add to it. Taylor put out a video earlier about Conrad Hussy's commitment as well. So make sure that you do go over and check it out as well. He wasn't sure what we were talking about tonight. I'm sure he thought we were going to talk about this, but not to the extent that we are.
Yeah.
Everybody's still wondering what Jordan Travis put the eyes out for. What did he put the eyes out for? And yes, guys, I will say that he doesn't do that because of who's coming from a high school, from a high school class. It is usually because someone's going to announce they're returning. Doesn't mean that's what it was for, but I'm pretty sure that that's what it was for. If you are expecting Jared Verse or Johnny Wilson or someone to announce that they're coming back, they're not going to take that. They're not going to do it on National Signing Day or even the day after because you still got like Conrad Hussy just committed tonight. They don't want to take the focus off of them and sit there basically and compete back and forth with what's getting the most attention. So they're going to do their part, and then they're going to announce when they're ready to announce and when it's appropriate to do so. So I don't want people freaking out because you haven't seen Jared Verse say he's coming or not coming, or Johnny Wilson coming or not coming. I've told everybody my predictions are I fully expect Johnny Wilson to be back. I fully expect that Jared Verse will be in the situation that he thinks it's best to come back for one more year and get a little bit more development under him. But we do have to wait for them to 100% confirm that. But everyone around right now is pretty much saying that it makes most sense for them to come back. We do have a Miami troll in the chat. As long as y'all keep it all in good fun, by all means, continue. Y'all have fun. But we're not going to sit here and go and get back and forth with each other. You're not going to call each other names and all that stuff. And unfortunately, that means I would remove the Miami person because this is a Florida State podcast. So y'all keep it clean and you'll be all right. Moving on a little bit, there are some transfer portal guys that are still out there that maybe we're still after into the depth of, do we think we're pushing harder? Do we think this is a bad thing that is delayed on people like, was it Fisk? He's one of them. He hasn't confirmed where he's going.
Not yet.
But I fully think that Florida State leads it. I think Cyprus is also led with Florida State. I wouldn't be surprised if in the next coming days or this next week that we would definitely get an answer on that. But what are your feelings on Cyprus or Fisk at this time? What do you think about those two?
Cyprus is one of the best transfer prospects, actually the best transfer prospect after Travis Hunter went to Colorado. I think this is a guy that had a PFF grade of 88, was very talented cornerback, and actually his game has developed through the last couple of years. I mean, you've seen the PFF grades from him from years past. In 2019, he had like a 58 grade. 2020, he had a 61, and then last year he had a 63. So he was progressively growing, but it wasn't to the extent of what he was this past season. I think he really took advantage of a great season. Now, can you turn that into solid production and keep that production up? It's to be determined, but I think when you have an Omarion Cooper that's kind of struggled last season, he showed his moments. Same thing as Kevin Knowles. They had those moments where they were being successful. Even a Jarian Jones was very successful in a reserve role and also a starter later in the year. You're looking at some of those guys right there, and I think if you're able to get a Cypress in that situation, I think that could really be something special. In terms of Fisk, you talked about it with Fabian Lovett. If he does not return, you have to kind of find some production. And I do know that Darrell Jackson is a very solid defensive tackle. I think he's got like a 71 PFF grade. It's very solid in what he has. And we all know about the ailing mother situation where he's trying to go take care of his mother. And Tallahassee would basically be the closest spot for him to do that. So I think this is a situation. It's a win-win situation for both parties at this point. And I think Florida State could really benefit from it. But you have to also think, if you bring in a guy like Fisk, how much will that kind of translate into both of their playing times? Because when you look at it, I think both guys can be efficient. What happens to a Joshua Farmer? What happens to a Malcolm Ray and guys like that? I think you're really going to have to figure out how the rotation is going to set. Good thing is, though, when you've seen in those losses that Florida State's had, their defensive tackle depth has not been the greatest. So you're trying to find ways to be efficient. You saw Will Shipley running straight up the middle on those inside run zones, and you're trying to figure out how to stop that. Well, get yourself some dominant defensive tackles, and I think if you set the edge and with your defensive ends, that hopefully Jared Verse and Patrick Payton on both sides, man, that could be something. That way you can own the line of scrimmage, and it would be very great. So honestly, I would love to have both of them. I think both of them are actually leading. Florida State's leading for both of them. So we'll definitely see how it goes out, but it's going to be really exciting to see.
Well, the way that I look at it is I can't wait. I personally think that we land both. I think we do lead the way with both, the same way that we led with Morlock and also is it Bell from South Carolina. So we brought in two, huge dynamic players in the tight end position. And now we're talking about bringing in a Fisk, and we're talking about bringing in. There was one more gentleman that he keeps slipping who it was, but we're after pretty decent in the transfer portal.
Well, you also got that kid from West Virginia as well. I can't even remember his name off the top of my head. But
that's who I'm
nose guard. They released the top 4 recently with Florida State in it. Don't know, because I think a visit could be circulating after the dead period ends up here, but we'll see how it goes with that.
Everyone kind of got worried about Conrad Hussy not signing yesterday. When we were told that he had a final that he had to take, and he pretty much was running out of time to be able to do anything, so that's why he pushed it till tonight. Plus, there was other schools still talking to him. Florida State was still talking to him. Mm-hmm. Everybody was giving their last pitch. Some schools gave their last-ditch effort to see if they could pull his attention to them, and it ended up being and going into the favor of Florida State. Like Taylor said earlier, this staff said they were going to put in all their chips to go get Conrad Hussy, and they did. Luckily, it was one chip enough to make sure that it happened. Do you feel like we're going to utilize what's his name? Morlock more in the traditional way of a tight end than we will Bell, and we'll kind of do some in around stuff with Bell.
So I think this is going to be the situation that Florida State uses him primarily in. I think it's going to be more so you're going to probably see a Douglas and a Morlock on goal line situations or short yardage situations. And you may put a Jaheim Bell on the outside or maybe even in the slot to kind of create that mismatch. You may even put him at halfback, which, maybe that two halfback set, having Jaheim Bell on one side, maybe running kind of like a wheel route sort of, or, just something to kind of keep the defense honest. I think Mike Norvell is going to really scheme, and this is a good problem to have. When you have mismatches all over your offense at this point and you're trying to create those mismatches to, kind of counteract some of those linebackers and safeties, I think this is going to be a good situation where I think Morlock can be utilized more as an inline blocker because you're no longer having to rely strictly on a Preston Daniel or a Wyatt Rector. While those two players have been productive at Florida State, I just think you have to understand that with the tight end position now, you're having more of an experienced guy that's been through it. And let's just say it's not for a converted quarterback or a walk-on that is kind of making some meaningful snaps. Nothing against those guys because I think they are, pivotal in what they do, especially Rector on special teams. You can't even forget to mention that. But just overall, I think Conrad or Morlock and everything kind of brings a different dynamic to this offense that not a lot of people talk about.
Yeah, and that was the biggest reason for bringing it up because I answered the question to a couple of fans that were in the Discord for Spirit Addicts, and I was pretty much explaining it in the same direction of thought. I still think that we're going to use Bell on some, I don't want to say trick plays, but some not so conventional plays. Yeah. I think he's pretty dynamic. If you can get him moving before he even catches the ball, he can end up being something very special.
I'm going to ask you a question real quick because I know he recently signed with the Battles End Collective. And I think this is kind of an interesting idea to kind of ponder on a little bit. Thinking about maybe a Johnny Wilson, Kentron Portier, and also a Jaheim Bell with those bigger targets. Do you think that 3 wide receiver set would ever be utilized at Florida State? Do you think they might have some packages involved with that?
I do. I think it's the main reason for going and getting these guys is to be able to put that package on the field. I mean, who's going to cover 3 of them? That's size.
Yeah.
It's hard enough to cover Johnny Wilson when he's out there by himself. But you put Portier, and I don't know who's going to – I don't know of a DB room, even our DB room. Yeah. I don't know who can cover that. So, yes, I think that's really the whole gist, the whole idea behind it was to have those – to where we could have these types of packages pulled up. So I'm going to rebuttal with another question.
Okay.
Do you think we see Bell line up in the halfback spot more than Morlock or less than this season? And I was also asked this question, so I'm asking.
Yeah, I mean, I think Bell is going to be utilized primarily in the slot, but I do think he's going to have those certain packages where I do think he may have about 100 rushing yards. I think this is a situation where I don't think he's going to be primarily utilized as a rushing threat because I think South Carolina really needed that in their offense because, let's just face it, their quarterback situation wasn't the greatest. And they were trying to figure out different ways to be creative. A lot of their injuries come from some key players, and they didn't really have the necessary depth to do anything. So while I think Bell is an effective weapon at halfback at times, I don't think he should have been utilized enough to have 340 yards of rushing at that point, if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, it does. It makes perfect sense. And I will say this. I'm extremely excited to not only see what's coming on the offensive side of the ball with the transfers that are coming in, but what would you say the biggest pickup is for Florida State on the defensive side of the ball, whether it be recruiting and not for next season, but whether it be on the recruiting side or the transfer portal? Who are you most excited to see that they pulled in for the defense?
Really, when you get down to it with recruiting and everything, this is a situation where I didn't really know where Florida State was really going to come from, but it really kind of came to my attention that with with Tatum Bethune and also Kalen DeLoach, they're coming back for this next season, and you're trying to find ways to be efficient at the linebacker spot. Blake Nicholson's an obvious choice, but I'm kind of going with basically the trenches again with the defensive tackle room. I think if you bring a guy like KJ Sampson in there and you're able to get him into the program, get him in the weight program and the strength program, get his weight necessarily. I think he's about 300 pounds now. If you get him maybe to a healthier, maybe 292 or something like that, I think that can be really efficient. And when you're having guys like that come into your program that can be difference makers, I think that's something that Florida State really, really prides itself on. And everybody can talk about the, Boots coming in because I think he could be efficient, but how much efficient can he be in his first year? We talked about the Aaron Hester. He's a specimen at defensive end, but he didn't really get to play because of the athletes that we had on the pass rushing side. So I'm going to go with KJ Sampson, but that's just my thoughts.
I actually like it. I was in between KJ Sampson and Boots myself, but and it's not for their first year though. It's long-term impact for the team.
Yeah.
But I still think KJ Sampson is still going to be one of the top tier players for the future of what Florida State's going to have. Now transfer wise, last year we was extremely excited to see the Johnny Wilson, the Micah Pittman, the Jared Verse come in. Yeah. And I feel like we're doing just as well in the transfer portal this year as we were last year. So I'm really excited to see the Bell, the Morlock. There's multiple guys that I'm excited to see. But other than tight end, are we really going after a huge skill position? Because we're not really pulling in running backs because we got Trey Benson.
Mike Norvell actually talked about this in a conference yesterday because this is finally the time that he gets to talk about some of these recruits because they have officially signed their letter of intent, and he is able to talk about those guys. He even alluded to that with them signing Hykeem Williams and Vandrevius Jacobs and Goldie Lawrence, he is not going to be signing another transfer or high school wide receiver anymore, unless something crazy happens, unless he has like 3 or 4 guys transfer out. This is probably the opportunity that everybody's getting with this. You've got talented guys in that room. Then you're also looking at the running back room. You've added Sam Singleton, who I think is a very, very talented 4-star running back to that group. And, he's already got running backs there. So, when you're looking at just transfers itself, it's just some skill positions. You've already got the tight end. You've already got wide receiver at this point. You've already got running back. You've got a quarterback committed to your class. When you're just looking at it as a whole, there's not really a whole lot of spots being filled. You're just filling just necessary depth, I guess you could say. And when we were going through the offensive line, this is a situation where Florida State has gotten 5 offensive linemen with recruiting and transfers. I think of Jeremiah Byers can play either the tackle or the guard position on the right side. I think he's not really your sexy pick that everybody thinks is going to be, your 1,000-yard rusher, 1,000-yard receiver, or even a 4,000-yard passer. This is a guy that's going to solidify your offensive line. Regardless of if Bless Harris plays this season, and let's just say he's not over the injury, then that would be a situation where Byers can come in and be successful. But do you think if you're looking at it now with Florida State having their 5 offensive linemen, and we've talked about it before, we thought that Florida State was going to go after a smaller offensive line class, but it doesn't seem that way now. It seems like they are zeroing in on some targets, and they may have one more target that they're going after. Do you think that they try to continue to grow that offensive line if the fit presents itself, or do you think they're almost basically done with recruiting that position as of right now?
Well, I personally think you're going to get to the point where the only way you take another offensive lineman is if he's just a superstar and it's available. But as of right now, I still think you can take 1 or 2 more. I think you don't stop recruiting that position because of what we've gotten so far, even though we've done very well with who we brought in. I still think you can't get enough big men in the trenches. Just like Antavius Woody flipping over to the defensive side of the ball. That's losing one of your offensive linemen right there because, and I do get that he's a 2022 kid, but how many guys might flip to the other side of the ball? It could happen. I'm not saying it will, but you saw last year, Caden Lyles, Bless Harris, and Robert Scott went down for a while. you got really thin and you couldn't waste a lot of your guys. I mean, we utilized Armella as much as we could, but you didn't want to lose his red shirt at the same time. So I think that you continue to recruit the position, but you obviously start getting a lot pickier because you're not in so much need of it. I do think that Florida State's still going to attack the DB era of the portal a lot in the near future. Even when spring happens, I think we're still going to be going after DBs because of one, what we've lost, two, what we have. Like the linebacker room, just with Omar going to be able to play this year, and then you've brought in Blake Nicholson, which he won't be starting, but
and
your linebacker room probably looks better.
Yeah, you forget about DeMarco Ward too. That's actually going to be
participating
with the team. Possibly, he's got to get a waiver first with the bowl game. So that's valuable experience that he's having.
Do you know if because this was my question, is Io going to get a chance to play in the bowl game, or is he cannot play until the 23 season?
I really don't know. I haven't asked him about it, but I mean, it doesn't count towards that. But I don't know if he's technically ineligible until next season because I think Shaziah Holmes is in the same situation at running back. I don't think they're eligible, but like I said, it's a good question.
Yeah, and we'll check on that. There was a couple of people that was writing on.
Honestly, that was a good question. I honestly have no idea. I know they added the new rule with everything with the situation there, but kind of just figuring that out.
In the chat on YouTube is going pretty. It's going pretty.
I see it. Yeah. I wanted to ask you something, and this is just the elephant in the room, I guess you could say. What about the Keldrick Faulk situation? What were your
I want to know if it was true. I want to know if it's true. I don't know why he would be the one that's leading the recruitment, but is it true that Woodson was the leader in the recruitment with Faulk? Because there's been multiple people drop that he was the leading recruiter for Faulk. And if that's true, then it's just the writing on the wall for Woodson this year. And I hate to answer it that way, but if he was definitely the guy leading the room or leading for Faulk, and we lost out on Faulk after doing so well for as long as we did, Woodson's kind of scaring me at this point if that's true. And I don't know why Papuchis wouldn't have been because that would be his positions coach. But we literally just lost him to Auburn, which, yes, it makes him closer to home. I get that. But they don't even have a positions coach hired. His position coach isn't even hired. So he doesn't even know who his position coach is, and he chose Auburn over us. So, yes, I was very pissed off that we lost him. I just want to know why I'm pissed off is what I want to know. And that what I mean by that is am I pissed off because Woodson dropped the ball, or am I pissed off because Faulk just decided that he wanted to be closer to home? I would rather be pissed off at Faulk, but I don't know that I can be.
It concerns me a little bit because I've alluded to this before. I am around that area originally before, and Highland Home is only about an hour and a half from Auburn. It is 3.5 hours from Tallahassee. So you really have to look at it and say, is it really that much closer to home? I mean, when you're really looking at it, and I understand his mom was very close in his recruitment. I get that. There is no doubt about it. Parents play a huge role in trying to stay at home. They want their babies to stay in the home state, with that. It's very different going from the state of Alabama to the state of Florida. But at the end of the day, this is an unexcusable offense for the Florida State staff and not able to close. And this is kind of the concern that we all kind of have at certain instances. You have to understand that this is a commit that you've had since July. He had visited Auburn 4 times since that commitment. And they had actually gotten Florida State to get him to visit on campus that weekend. And on Saturday or Sunday afternoon, he had visited the Auburn campus secretly. It sucks, man. It's a staff that had only been established for 3 weeks, and you somehow lose out on that. And everybody talks about, yes, we have boots. I think, Lamont Green Jr. is a very, very talented piece. I think Jaden Jones is very talented as well at the JUCO ranks, but he is dealing with an injury. I don't really know, because if you're losing with the defensive end side of the ball, you're looking at some of those defensive end transfers. There's not a whole lot out there in the transfer portal. So you're having to add through the recruiting ranks. And when you have the second best player in your class decommit from you to commit to a new staff in Auburn, I get it's new car smell, it's a new sin, he's closer to home. I get that. But at the same time, this is a situation where I think Florida State really has to lick their wounds tough, because everybody can say he's going to chase the bag. I get that's a very typical statement in these times with NIL and everything like that. But the other thing is you can't really make excuses for this recruitment. I think the staff recruits pretty well. I think they do a lot of good jobs and build a lot of great relationships. They're a little bit more old-fashioned when it comes to recruiting. I think they want to care more about the people more than anything. I think this is, just for example, Odell is one of those guys that talks about, other things other than football. I think that's what they excel in. They build those relationships with the parents, with the recruits, everything like that as well. And that is great. Nothing wrong with that at all. But I just think when this situation comes up and you are so close with this recruitment, and all you have to do is close the deal on this and allow him just to go back home, make his decision and get through with the dead period, and that way he signs on Wednesday, and they weren't done. So I can say how much of a great class this was, and I think it was a pretty great foundation for what they're bringing to this class. But it does hurt to not seal the deal on him. I mean, you can say all you want to about Cedric Baxter and Jalen Brown and other guys like that, and even Cameron Robinson, who just visited recently. But that's not a high caliber need. You always need pass rushers. So I think that's the situation where you have to look at it. Is it a John Papuchis thing? I don't want to make the blame game. I don't want to say anybody's at fault for it. We're all at fault. Florida State didn't seal the deal on the recruitment. That's plain and simple.
Well, what bothers me about that is, and I'm mostly in agreement with what you're saying here at the end, except for how much time and effort was put in on him. I feel like we put just as much time and effort on Falk as we did Hykeem Williams.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
But who we were so hard on last year in Dugans, the wide receiver coach, has completely flipped the script for us this year and is killing it. Woodson, who was seeming to do well last year, even though we lost out on Travis Hunter and some others, but it seemed like Woodson was the flashy guy. It seemed like he was going to get big recruits. And again, I don't know that Woodson was the lead recruiter for Falk. I'm just basing that off of what I've heard. And I wouldn't be mad if Papuchis was the leader, because then I know we did everything we were supposed to. And I trust that Papuchis is doing his job because of what he's done so far. I mean, he is developing players whether we like it or not, whether people want to realize that Papuchis is actually a really good coach. Now, I did question Papuchis' ability to coach special teams due to his first season, but look how much better we've done this year. So it's not that I want to point fingers or I want to be mad at somebody. Yeah. What it is, though, is if it's a trend with Woodson's name or what Woodson's doing on the trail, then you have to eliminate those problems, because you're going to continue to have those problems. And I really don't think next year you're going to be able to use these excuses on why your recruiting class isn't top 10. I think in the 2024 class is where the expectations are really lifted by not only the fans, but the administration, also by Coach Norvell. I think you're going to have to recruit in the top 10 because, we do a very good job in the portal. That's true. But why wouldn't you want to do very good in both? It can always be better. We can always do better. So I just want the guys that want to be here and want to recruit for us, instead of just being lazy and getting the guys that they've, a sure hand guy. We know we can get him because he doesn't have but 2 other offers, or he's a 3-star that's not really getting attention from anyone else, whether he's really a 3-star or not. So my question is do you feel like anyone on the coaching staff, and you don't have to name them, but is anyone on the coaching staff doing that? Does it feel like they're just going after the guys they know they can get and they feel like they've done their job?
Personally, I could see maybe one coach or maybe 2 coaches going for other opportunities this offseason. But I think more of the focus, I think, is going to be more along the lines of off the field staff. I think they really have to hit that home because I like a guy like Derek Ray, the GM at Florida State now. I think that brings you a sense of just, development that you can have. Because as we know, Alex Atkins and Mike Norvell are probably the two best recruiters that you have on staff. But Derek Ray is very much up there with being recruiting in his prowess. Ryan Bartow is another guy who recruits at a very, very high level for Florida State and does a lot for them in an off-the-field role. So I think you need to have more of those guys in line with that. But like I said, it's hard to ignore some of the defensive staff that we've had because we haven't really secured some of these pivotal defensive commits in the last couple of years. No shots to them because, like I said, as Mike is talking about, Norvell's all about that fit and family. And we talked about this in a previous episode. If he does go for another coach, let's just say if he does move on from a coach and he hires another one, it's going to be a coach that he has had a prior relationship with. It's a guy that he has been involved with and knows his coaching schemes and knows he is going to help the culture of this locker room. And you could say culture doesn't matter and we just care about wins and everything. But look at Jimbo's last couple of years. That was not a very good thing of a culture environment. And I hate to bring up the Jimbo thing because he's now at Texas A&M. But it just comes to a situation where you have to build things the right way. You can't just have it a quick fix. You can't be a Michigan State and then turn around and do really terrible the next year. You have to build that foundation. If you don't build that foundation and your foundation gets broke, that is a long time coming for a program that is trying to get back on the right track. So that's just something I'm thinking of right now with that.
Right. Well, everybody, if you're just now coming in to watching the episode, the whole thing that we started with was the coming of Conrad Hussy. He has now signed his letter of national intent, or letter of intent, excuse me. He's coming with the 2023 class, with the Hykeem Williams, with the Edwin Joseph, with the Lamont Greens. He is coming. He will be here. And I'm very excited to say that it was a much-needed piece after what this class turned into with losing a Falk, with missing out on a couple other guys. Conrad was a very needed piece just to ease some people's minds that were really worried about where we were going in the recruiting standoff. So I do believe that this is a very important recruitment process. I do believe that this can make some of us let off the gas a little bit on who's at fault, because you do have three dynamic players that are coming together that, yes, they don't play on the same side of the ball, but two of them do. Hykeem Williams is real good buddies with Edwin Joseph. Edwin Joseph is real good buddies with Conrad Hussy. Now they're all three really good friends, and now they're all three coming to Florida State. There's been some junk going on Twitter where Travis Hunter and Hykeem Williams are going back and forth. And Travis Hunter stated, "You could never be me." Hykeem Williams says, "You're right. I'm solid. I basically hold up to my end of the deal, which is coming to Florida State after I said I would. So you're right. I'm solid. You're not. We aren't alike." And Travis Hunter said, "Why don't you contact the coaches? They'll take me over you any day." And I don't know what Hykeem replied with, other than I think just the first one saying that he was solid got under Travis Hunter's skin pretty bad. So they go back and forth, and I think it was all in good fun starting off, and then I think Travis might have took it a little bit too serious and got out there with it, which we all know that Travis is a little bit of an emotional player. You've watched him at Jackson State. He's a kind of chippy guy. He kind of pushes people around when he gets upset. But all of that will die off. Hykeem Williams is definitely the highest ranked player that we pulled in this class. He definitely shows to be why. I think the kid's pretty much built, ready to go. And once you get a little bit more development underneath him and he gets to understand the playbook, I don't think we're going to see a bust on this guy. I think he's a boom type guy. I don't think we got a lot to worry about. I will ask this question because a lot of people have compared him to Malik. McClain. Do you think he has the troubles that Malik's had so far at Florida State? Or is there a reason that you could say you don't feel like that's the problem? Which I don't know that anybody felt like Malik was going to have problems. But now that we've seen Malik's problems, does Hykeem kind of run into those same obstacles? Or is it a completely
I
different?
think they're different athletes. I definitely think Malik is a very, very talented athlete. I just think the problem that was coming out of him when he was coming out of IMG and also when he was at, I believe, Foley, if I remember correctly, where he was originally before that, but just kind of looking at certain things that, he needed to work on. And this is a situation where I thought Malik could have taken that next step forward. It just kind of happens that Florida State took 3 transfer wide receivers in front of him. And his footwork wasn't the greatest, and his route running wasn't the greatest either. Doesn't really help when you didn't really have a whole lot of things going for you. Wide receivers couldn't create separation. It's just a lot. He was put into a lot of situations as a true freshman that probably shouldn't have been put in front of right then. I don't think Hykeem Williams plays that much as a true freshman. I think if he gets 120, 130 yards, I would be very shocked. But, I mean, who knows? I mean, by that time. But I just think when you're having upperclassmen like that as transfers coming in, I know he is a very, very dynamic transfer or a recruit, but I just don't know if it's enough to push him over because, as we've talked about before, it's hard to contribute as a true freshman, even if you are that good and
Absolutely.
are that kind of guy. I just think if you kind of go ahead and sit there and kind of analyze everything that's going on, I think that Hykeem Williams could benefit from potentially, I'm not going to say red shirt, but play meaningful snaps in lesser tier games, being able to get that experience, and then being able to come back in the second year and being an efficient piece.
Yeah, and just in case you were wondering, they're talking about Tyler on the chat. They weren't trying to say Taylor.
Yeah.
Just if you didn't know, I saw you looking over, and I was like, "They're not talking."
I'm really looking at the all the chat. The chat's just going crazy. I was
Look, here's the truth, Miami fans. Look, it's true. Okay, we have beat you 2 years in a row. First year was 4th and 14. This year, y'all wasn't even in the stadium with us, and it's true. So I don't know what the argument is. Y'all are talking about who we lost to. You lost to Middle Tennessee State. Y'all lost to Duke. We're 20-0 against Duke. We've never lost to Duke ever. So I don't know exactly what the conversation's about.
I kind of want to angle this off to kind of get our last point in there, but this is kind of in regards to, I guess you could say, Miami fans. I'm not even really talking about them, but you know how their expectations are in the preseason. And Florida State coming off this 9-3 season, potentially playing, in the bowl game, potentially getting to 10 wins. And the excitement is there. Jordan Travis is back. Most of your offensive weapons are back. You're still trying to figure out a verse, and Fabian Lovett and Jamie Robinson are going to be coming back. But, for the most part, these fans are very excited for what they got to coming to the table for next season. And everyone is putting up the C word with championship. You got things like that. And you're wondering if Florida State can be able to deliver on that championship promise, whether it be ACC, which I think people should kind of strive to, or national championship, considering it's a 14 playoff or 12-team playoff later down the road. Really, and this is just my take on this, you have to crawl before you can walk with this situation. I think Florida State fans kind of have to slow their roll down, because prior to this year, we had 4 straight losing seasons. I think Mike Norvell is heading in the right direction, but I just don't think, as we talked about with the foundation thing, if you're setting a foundation as a program and you're going to the next step as a program, are you taking that next step in terms of 9-3 to 11-1? Are you taking it maybe to a 9-3 and 10-2 kind of situation? What are kind of your thoughts on the fans talking about these high expectations, and how do you think Florida State is going to kind of pan out through all of this?
Well, I personally believe that the Florida State fans shouldn't set the expectations it's a natty or a break. First and foremost, you have to realize how hard it is to win a national championship. Bobby Bowden only did it twice, and it took him 17 years to get to the first one. So it's not something that you just go out there and do. Now, do I think that Florida State's bare minimum is to compete for an ACC championship, absolutely. I think that no one else in the ACC should be better than us. I think that we should be one of the two top teams, which I think Clemson will probably still sneak in there to be the other one at this point. But I
Yeah.
think that Florida State should be the better team out of the two. So I personally believe that your expectations should be a 10-2, 11-1 type season, but that's with competing for an ACC championship. Does that 11-1 come from losing the ACC championship? Does that come from losing? I don't know what that looks like yet. I do know what our schedule is. I don't think we should lose a home game this season at all. I just don't see that happening.
Yeah, it's a pretty I won't say easy home stretch because you can lose games that you're not supposed to.
Well, I mean, look at Syracuse. They surprised everybody last year, and I had no clue that they were going to be that good. Luckily, by the time they got to us, they were beat up and battered.
Yeah.
And we had started playing really good ball by that time.
Mm-hmm.
Because I do think that Florida State progressed throughout the season. We became better and better. Even in the 3 losses that we had in the middle of the season, not one of those losses were unreachable wins. We could have won those games with a play going our way. This year, I think we lost very small to the teams that were capable of beating us. But you did beat a team like LSU that went on to have a huge stretch in the SEC.
Mm-hmm.
You did beat a very good LSU team afterwards. Now that you see, we're going to talk about this a little bit, but my expectations are you should definitely be competing for an ACC championship next year. Now, if we do better than that, we exceed and we go to a national championship or to the playoffs, then yes, by all means, it's possible. I'm not saying it's not, but ACC championship should be where your mind's at. That should be what you're focused on as a Florida State fan. So I do believe that that's what I'm going to be pushing for. I did give the way too early prediction on what I think our season looks like.
Yeah.
I'm not doing it again until I do a little bit more research. So I do want to ask this question. We do have a bowl game coming up next week.
Mm-hmm.
We have obviously against the Oklahoma team that doesn't have a lot of great players because of transfers, because of opting out, stuff to that nature. So I do think Florida State goes and handles business, and we're going to talk about these next week. But we're going to jump all the way up front because this will be forgotten by the time it's to be talked about next.
Mm-hmm.
JT Daniels decides he's coming back for the 2023 season for LSU. So we've got the comeback of the 2 old men quarterbacks and Jordan Travis and JT Daniels.
Jaden Daniels.
Jaden, I'm sorry. Y'all know who I'm talking
about. JT is transferred like 4 different times. So.
Yeah. So Jaden Daniels, y'all know who I'm talking about. LSU's quarterback. My apologies. Do you feel like we still have the upper hand on them like we did last season? Are we a much better caliber team to win that game? Because last year, other than the score, or this year, excuse me, other than the score, I mean, we beat them in all facets of the game. We wasn't even close, other than the scoreboard. Do you think that happens again, or we win a cleaner game? Is it close? I don't know if it can get any closer, but
I mean, when you look at it, though, I mean, Butte probably dropped like 5 or 6 passes. What did he have? 1 catch, maybe?
Yeah.
And I mean, you're thinking he is going to be more of a dynamic weapon. You had Jenkins muff 2 punt returns, so they weren't perfect either. That they kind of led us to get a little bit more of an advantage, but just overall, I think Florida State should have the upper advantage just because of the returning experience they have. But man, that defense is still scary. I believe Denver Harris actually transferred over there, if I remember correctly, just before we started the show and everything. So it's going to be great to see how they kind of gel together and kind of get back to what they need to be. And maybe they might make another run at the SEC again. Who knows?
Yeah. I do know that their wide receiver that we pretty much shut down in that game is coming back as well.
Yeah.
So I'm sure he's looking for his revenge because he didn't do anything against us this year. So I think it's going to be a really good game again. I think that it's really cool that we're going to end our actual season in the same Camping World Stadium that we're going to begin in next year.
They will too. So
well, they have a week 0 game.
Yeah. Well, yeah.
So not that means a whole lot, but they do have a week 0 game.
Yeah.
I've got about 5 minutes left. I will say this to Miami fans because y'all keep stating stuff. Just keep extending Mario Cristobal and Josh Gaddis.
Yes.
Please keep
Please.
extending them.
Please.
Y'all can say that they're the greatest coaches since loaf bread if you want. I hope you retain them. I hope you keep bringing them back. Keep giving them extensions. I hope Ruiz still keeps throwing money out there and gets y'all all the players in the world. As long as you keep performing the way that you did this year, I'm perfectly fine with it. But in all truthfulness, I do want Miami to get better. I want the Gators to get better because I want all three Florida schools to. I know it sounds crazy, but I want the state of Florida to come back to ruling college football the way it once did.
Yeah.
One of those three teams were always in the mix to win a national championship back in the 90s and the 80s. So that's what I wanted to get back to. Don't know that it ever will. Miami's giving me no hope. Florida's not giving me any hope either. Billy Napier is he's kind of missed out on some guys this year that I really thought they were going to pull. So I don't know. I don't know if they've got the right people. But I've got about 4 minutes left. Taylor, if you've got let everybody know where they can find you and make sure they go watch your video on YouTube as well.
Yeah, of course. You can find me on Instagram at Norvell Central, on Twitter at Central Norvell. Like Chris talked about, I got a YouTube channel that I'm trying to get up as many subscribers as I can. I'm close to 2,000. I believe I'm about 120 away. I'm also doing some fifth quarter articles over there. So be sure to go check those out as well. I usually have a link for those in most of my social media accounts. But as always, it was great talking about the Noles and everything. Great commitment today, and I hope that we have many more coming in the next couple of weeks.
Well, appreciate it, Taylor. Well, everyone, I appreciate you coming and watching the show. I usually take about 3 to 4 minutes on this. So before you do run off, make sure that you do subscribe to the Spirit Addicts channel. Make sure that you also hit the notification bell so you don't miss any of the content that we drop. Also, make sure that you're following us on social media because we put out some really good graphics, just like the one for Hykeem Williams, Conrad Hussy, all the different guys that we've put them out for. We also put out some really good ones for the tailgate that we're having this weekend, or next weekend, excuse me. I say weekend because our weekend starts early next week because our game's on Thursday. So Thursday, we have a huge tailgate for the bowl game. Even if you're not going to the game, come spend $50 at the tailgate. We'll have the TVs out there as well. All you can eat, all you can drink alcohol beverages. There's going to be vendors there with throwback Florida State clothing and other things. There's going to be a couple other vendors there as well. There's going to be former Noles there out of the wazoo. So make sure that you're there. Come get some autographs signed. Bring whatever it is that you would like to get signed. I'm not sure if we have any parking spots available left to buy. I will check and see and then put them up if we do. If not, there's plenty of places to park. Make sure that you get over to the tailgate. We would prefer you to buy your tickets now because on the 26th, they go up by $10. So I would really prefer you to go get them now so you can save the money. That will be in this video. So after this video is over, give me about 10 minutes. Come back to this video, go down to the description, and check for the tailgate tickets link. Or you can go to my social media at Spirit Addicts at Twitter or at Spirit Addicts on Instagram, or look for Chris Frazier on Facebook, and you can find the link to the tailgate. Buy the tailgate tickets. Come over. If your kids are 10 or younger, they come in for free. And then we obviously know they can't drink. So if your kid's older than that, $25 for them to come in, something to that nature. Will work out those details with you when you're there. But it's going to be a really good time. We got a DJ coming. There's going to be live music. There's going to be 2 TVs and a projector. So we're going to be you can watch the game from there if you can't get into the game. There's multiple people that are selling their tickets just to stay at the tailgate area to watch the game because they don't want to go deal with the hassle of getting in and out of the stadium. So by all means, make sure that you come. I hope you enjoyed the video. As always, your host.